we are looking at a pretty solitary, kind of grammatically fractured late-night email today. It was sent from someone named Beta Count, and it was actually sent directly to themselves.
Yeah, literally just a note to self.
Exactly. Fired off on a Saturday evening, April 4th, 2026, at exactly 7:01 p.m. And the address is business.take.1.1994@gmail.com.
Right, so there's no publisher here, no peer review process.
No, nothing like that. I mean, the only visual backdrop we really have for this artifact is just that standard brightly colored Google Gmail logo. And yet, this single, completely unvarnished note to self basically dismantles the fundamental framework of how you and I process information every single day.
It really does. It is the absolute definition of raw insight. You are looking at this moment of cognitive rebellion captured in real time right before the sender had a chance to clean it up or, like, make it sound academic.
Yeah, welcome to our latest deep dive, by the way. Our mission today is to unpack this highly concentrated primary source. We're putting the traditional framework of the 5 Ws up against what this email calls the 6th W.
Right, those basic pillars of who, what, where, when, and why.
Yeah, exactly, up against the 1H, which is the how.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we even look at the words in the email, I am just fascinated by the medium itself.
Oh, the self-addressed email format?
Yeah, like we all send these late-night digital notes to ourselves.
Oh.
We text ourselves links. We email ourselves these half-baked thoughts. Why is an artifact like this such a rich vein for us to analyze?
Well, think about the cognitive filter you apply when you communicate with literally anyone else. Like when someone sits down to write an essay, a memo, or even just a casual Slack message to a colleague.
You're always thinking about how it sounds.
Exactly. They are instantly translating their thoughts into a socially acceptable, structurally sound format. They are anticipating the audience. But a self-addressed email sent at 7:01 p.m. on a Saturday.
It's just entirely raw.
Right. It bypasses that performative filter entirely. The sender isn't trying to sound smart. I sort of picture this stark cityscape at night outside their window, and they are just desperately trying to capture a sudden realization before it evaporates. You are looking at the bare mechanics of an aha moment.
I love that. The stakes are purely internal. They just needed to get the thought out of their head and onto a server somewhere. So let's look at exactly what that thought was.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We have to start with the subject line, because it sets the entire philosophical foundation for the critique that follows. The subject line just reads, J26, period, mastering the quote-unquote 6th W.
What's fascinating here is the specific choice of the word mastering. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that subject line.
How so?
Well, it positions the how, the 6th, the W, as an active, ongoing struggle. It isn't just some passive piece of trivia you can just look up on Wikipedia.
Oh, I see. It's a skill.
Exactly. It's a skill. And that immediately separates it from the 5 Ws, which are, essentially just data points you can memorize.
But hold on. Let me push back on that a little bit. On treating the 5 Ws like they are somehow inferior.
Sure. Go ahead.
Because when I'm orienting myself in a new space, I'd say I'm researching a new competitor in the market, or trying to understand a complex historical event. Finding out the who, what, where, when, and why is the absolute logical first step.
Right. Gives you the lay of the land.
Yeah, I need those basic facts just to build the perimeter of what I'm looking at. So why does this email set up the how in opposition to those foundational elements? Like they're the enemy.
Well, Beta Count isn't arguing that those basic facts are useless. Like you said, you need the perimeter. The critique is really about cognitive gravity.
Cognitive gravity.
Yeah. Our brains naturally gravitate toward those 5 Ws because they are incredibly cheap calories, cognitively speaking. They are easy to categorize, they fit really neatly into bullet points, and they give us an immediate dopamine hit of feeling informed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we read a headline and feel like experts.
Right. The problem and the hostility you're sensing in this email arises when that starting point becomes the finish line.
Okay, so we mistake the perimeter for the entire property.
Precisely. Let's look at the exact text from the body of the email to see how the sender actually frames this. They write that we have, quote, somehow emphasized the hell out of the 5 Ws.
Emphasize the hell out of it. I mean, you can feel the frustration in that keystroke. It's visceral.
It's a totally systemic call-out because a society, or even just an individual learner, that overemphasizes the who, what, where, when, and why is actively creating an illusion of competence.
An illusion?
Yeah, because if you consume enough basic facts, you feel incredibly smart. But you aren't actually capable. You've just collected a massive pile of data points without understanding the underlying mechanisms that connect them.
It's like baking a cake, if you really think about it.
Oh, okay, I like where this is going.
Like knowing who baked the cake, knowing what kind of cake it is, where it was made in some downtown bakery.
The basic facts again.
Right. When it was pulled out of the oven, and even why it was baked, for a retirement party or whatever. Absolutely. None of that information teaches you how to bake the cake yourself.
Not a single thing.
You could have all 5 W's perfectly memorized. You could literally write a comprehensive Wikipedia article on the history of that specific cake.
Yeah.
And you would still be standing in your kitchen staring blankly at a bag of flour, completely paralyzed.
Exactly. And notice what happens in your analogy when you only possess that cake data. If someone asks you to fix a bad recipe or innovate a new flavor, you just can't do it.
Right, you're stuck.
You have declarative knowledge, the facts about the object, but zero procedural knowledge. You don't know the mechanics of the chemistry actually happening in the oven. That lack of procedural knowledge is a specific danger this 2026 email is flagging.
This actually completely reframes a theory I've had about modern burnout.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, we talk so much about information overload today, and I always just assumed I felt overwhelmed simply because the volume of information was too high. There's just too much stuff to read.
Right, the fire hose of content.
Yeah, but looking at BetaCount's critique, I'm realizing I might be overwhelmed because I'm basically hoarding an endless stream of surface-level W's without any of the structural integrity of the H.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like I have a million puzzle pieces, but no picture on the box to show me how they actually interlock. So I just feel lost.
That is the mechanical failure of the modern information diet, right there. Take a hard look at how you and I consume news, or how a typical social feed is structured.
It's all W's.
It is entirely optimized for the W's. It is a relentless barrage of who did what, where it happened, when it occurred, and maybe a superficial guess at why. It is cognitively exhausting to process all those disparate facts.
Yeah, it really is.
And the reason it feels so unfulfilling is that rarely do those bite-sized updates pause to explain the complicated how behind the event. Like, how does a specific kink in the global supply chain actually function mechanically to cause that shortage?
Or how does a new piece of legislation physically change the tax code step by step?
Exactly. We are drowning in the W's, and we're starving for the H.
Starving for the H-man. Which brings us to the specific casualty of this starvation. The email lays out the consequences of this imbalance in the second half of the text, and it does so with a very, very strange grammatical choice.
The phrasing here is super interesting.
Yeah, the raw phrasing says we, quote, failed to depth, acknowledge, and address one H, overemphasize the 5 W's, end quote.
It's almost written in shorthand, right? Like the thought is racing way ahead of the typing.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. I want to zero in on that phrase, failed to depth. That just isn't standard English.
Not at all.
The sender is using the word depth as a verb. Not failed to reach depth or failed to create depth, but failed to depth.
Yeah, it's very deliberate.
When you turn a noun into a verb like that, it implies a very deliberate, active process that is being neglected. It makes me wonder, does the very act of chasing those easy 5 W's actively prevent us from achieving depth?
I think the grammatical shift is the linchpin of the entire argument, honestly. Depth is treated as an execution. By failing to even acknowledge the one H, let alone address it, frameworks that rely only on the basic facts actively rob us of mechanic.
They steal the mechanics right out from under us.
Yes, true depth is entirely reliant on the how. You just cannot have deep knowledge of a complex geopolitical event or a piece of enterprise software or even a new physical skill without rolling up your sleeves and addressing the mechanics of how it functions.
It's almost like the 5 W's are the vocabulary words, but the how is the grammar that actually makes the language work.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Like you can memorize the word for dog and the word for ball, but until you know how to string them together with verbs and syntax, you cannot tell a story. You're basically just a person standing in a room pointing at things.
And unfortunately, pointing at things is what our current professional and educational environments often reward.
Wow, yeah, it looks productive.
Right, it looks productive, it feels fast, but it's fundamentally shallow.
I want to spend some time exploring this because if we are going to understand how to apply this 6th W, we really need to see it in action.
Let's do it.
Let's take a complex real-world example that, the person listening to this right now might encounter in their day-to-day life. Let's talk about the rollout of a massive new artificial intelligence model.
Okay, yeah, that's a perfect test case for this framework.
Okay, so the news breaks. If you are operating purely on the traditional framework, the one beta count says we emphasize the hell out of, you collect your facts.
Right, you gather your W's.
You know who released the model.
Yeah.
You know what it is called, and like what its benchmark scores are. You know where it's being deployed, when it becomes available to the public, and why the company built it, usually just to beat a competitor. So you read 3 articles, you have all your W's lined up neatly, and you walk into a meeting feeling completely informed.
You feel informed, but you are actually highly vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Yes, because what happens when that AI model starts hallucinating data or making biased decisions? The 5 Ws offer you absolutely no diagnostic power.
Oh man, that's so true.
You don't know how the neural network assigns weights to its training data. You don't know how the reinforcement learning mechanically shaped its outputs. Because you skipped the 1H, you are entirely at the mercy of the system.
You're just a passenger.
Exactly. You can observe its behavior, but you cannot intervene, predict, or truly understand it. You have, in the words of the email, failed to depth.
That is terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it applies to everything, not just AI.
Everything.
If a new biotechnology breakthrough is announced, and you only learn who discovered it and what disease it targets, you don't actually understand the science. You just know the marketing copy. You have to understand how the molecule actually binds to the receptor.
And this is exactly why the subject line uses the word mastering. Transitioning from the W's to the H is not a passive reading exercise. Tracing a causal chain, mapping a system out, understanding a complex mechanism.
It takes work.
It takes a lot of heavy lifting in the prefrontal cortex. It requires you to sit in a space of confusion for a while, which, let's be honest, most of us actively try to avoid.
We hate being confused.
We really do.
So, what does this all mean? Let's take BetaCount's late-night revelation and drop it directly into the lap of the listener today. We are talking about a learner's blueprint here. How does a person who wants to actually understand their field stop hoarding these surface-level facts?
Right.
Like even right now, as you were listening to us unpack this artifact, how do you change your cognitive approach?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to cultivate a very specific reflex. True learners must actively resist the gravity of the easy facts.
Fight the dopamine hit.
Exactly. Whenever you read a white paper or review your research notes or sit in a presentation, you must purposefully hit the brakes. You have to force yourself to ask the mechanical questions.
Because the text probably isn't going to give it to you.
More often than not, no. The text you are reading likely failed to depth itself. The author probably didn't provide the how automatically because it was just easier for them to list the W's. You have to demand the mechanism.
You have to be the one to dig for it. If a speaker says a new corporate policy is going to reduce operational costs by 20%, you can't just nod and accept the what.
Right, you can't just write down 20% and move on.
You have to pause and say, wait, walk me through the gears. Mechanically, logically, how is that reduction going to be achieved step by step? You have to force the depth into the room.
It requires becoming an investigator of systems rather than a collector of trivia. And it changes the way you interact with the information permanently. You stop asking for summaries, and you basically start asking for blueprints.
I love that. You stop asking for summaries and you start asking for blueprints. This single fractured email from 2026 is packing a massive paradigm shift into just a few dozen characters. It is incredible how much philosophy is hidden inside this one solitary moment from BetaCount.
It really is a dense little artifact.
Let's distill all of this down as we wrap up. If there is one ultimate insight for you to take away from this entire deep dive, it's this. The 5 W's give you the scaffolding.
Yep, the frame.
They build the shape of the building, they give you the street address, they tell you who the architect is. But only the 1H, the how, gives you the depth. The how is the plumbing. It's the electrical wiring. It's the structural integrity that actually keeps the roof from caving in.
That's exactly right.
To truly understand any topic, to achieve actual mastery, you must move beyond the illusion of competence that comes from hoarding surface-level facts and actively master the mechanics of the how.
It is such a vital shift in perspective. And, as we wrap up, I think the source material leaves us with a highly provocative question to mull over.
Ooh, what's that?
Think about the physical medium of this artifact. It was drafted on Gmail. Our modern communication tools, email platforms, instant messaging, social media feeds, they are all fundamentally engineered for rapid, short-form exchange.
Right, they're built for speed.
They are built for speed and volume. So we really have to ask ourselves, are our digital technologies intrinsically wired to emphasize the 5 Ws? Because explaining the how takes time, it takes space, and it takes nuance.
Oh, wow.
Is the very screen you use to navigate the world making it technologically and culturally harder to ever communicate true depth?
Are the tools we use to connect actually forcing us to fail to depth? That is a brilliant, unsettling thought to end on. It makes you look at the messy, unvarnished reality of human cognition in a whole new light.
It really does.
Sometimes the most profound insights aren't the ones we polish, package, and present to an audience. Sometimes they're just the raw mechanical truths we desperately try to save for ourselves, hiding in a draft folder before the digital noise washes them away.